very long train of cars at the moment sitting for 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th and nearly 12th position, all in that group. Just a bit further back, the second of the G Drive Racing Exigma 04 car is the 21 machine, and it's got Sam Michaels at the wheel, but in the commentary booth we have Scott Michaels, who's able to chat to us. Scott, how was the stint for you?
Stressful, to be honest. Funny thing, we're used to having these endurance races with so many different classes, and you only end up racing sort of 5 or 6 cars most of the race. And yeah, when you got 60 odd around you, it's a completely different story. So yeah, it was very stressful, just trying to make sure I didn't make a mistake, because that would just drop you 20 places straight away if you end up dropping a wheel in the grass or something. And then also stressing about these crazy incident point limits we're having to deal with. So yeah, stressful, but I'm glad to be out of the car and hand it over to Sam. And
is there a big kind of drive to make sure you're hitting fuel numbers and trying to eke out these stint lengths to hit the hour mark, or are we making that up?
No, you're absolutely right. That's something that we'll prioritise later on in the race. Right now, we're in a position where firstly, I put in possibly the qualifying lap of my life to get into 12th place in this field. So we were a little bit out of position at the start, which meant that it was important for me to push as hard as I could to try and stay with the guys we were with, rather than just submarining through the pack trying to save fuel. But yeah, definitely later on, because the pit lane is so long at this track, if we can save ourselves a pit stop, it's going to make a huge difference. So later on in the race, when things are spread out a bit more and we're not in danger of submarining back through the pack, we'll certainly be looking at fuel numbers. But I can imagine the guys at the front, and in fact, I know for a fact the reason VRS Coanda have chosen the McLaren is because it's just better on fuel, and they will save a pit stop on us based on that. So yeah, it's a massive part of the race for sure.
Scott,
and there's nothing that you guys can do.
Sorry, say again?
Go on, Nick.
Sorry, Scott, Nick Damon. Just interesting mention about VRS Coanda and going with the McLaren. Did you do a lot of testing of all the available chassis before deciding which car to enter the race with?
We did. We did a decent amount. We had a reasonably big event last week, so our sort of preparation's been curtailed to just the last 7 days. We wanted to make a decision quite quickly. We kind of chose it based on the incident point limit and which car we felt most comfortable not making mistakes in, and that was kind of, it ended up being by far the BMW for most of the team. I actually was really pushing for the Ford GT, but unfortunately I got outvoted on that one. I think we probably would have been the only one in the field, but I would have enjoyed that for sure. But yeah, the McLaren is quite an edgy car, we found, so there was speed in it, but we felt there was more comfortable speed in the BMW, certainly taking into account the incident point limit. But yeah, we knew the McLaren had some sort of fuel advantage, but actually, if I'm honest, I wasn't aware it was as extreme as it is. So that's kind of caught us by surprise a little bit in the practice races this week. But yeah, we chose ours based on comfort and being able to get through, hopefully, without a drive-through penalty.
You mentioned the instant point limit. Obviously, that's 100 over 24 hours, which is only, 5 an hour, effectively. I mean, you've just driven for 2 hours. Did you manage to meet your target of under 10 instant points?
Oh, man, with all those cars around you and not being able to make a single mistake, it was stressful. And I was extremely pleased with my qualifying lap. I'm possibly even more pleased that I got through my first 2 hours with, I think, 4 incident points. So that's about half the budget we've got for a 2 hour stint. So we're basically on a zero tolerance policy with incident points, just because if we can have 20 left for the last hour, then great, we'll use them up, no problem. So yeah, we're not trying to budget too much, like per hour. We're trying to just save as many as we can for the end of the race. But yeah, it's obviously a double whammy with this track in particular being really difficult to stay within the incident point limits. Unlike Le Mans, which is the total opposite, where it's really hard to go out and even get them. Spa is a really hard track to not get incident points at, and then obviously the pit lane is kind of the double whammy with that, because it's so long that it's an enormous penalty if you do end up getting a drive-through. So yeah, we've actually set ourselves out with, that's kind of our number one goal, is not get a drive-through and do all we can around that.
And were you watching the guys ahead of you going, you've got one there, and you've got one there? Because I don't know, some of my racing, yeah, he's slightly off, yeah, that's a point for him.
Oh, absolutely, especially as the slipstream's a big deal on this track, so it's not worth even if you're quicker than the car in front, sometimes it's not worth overtaking them, just because it's kind of nicer to sit behind them, relax, and not get the incident points. I was following, I think it was Moreno Sarica in the Williams car for a while through my first stint. I can't say I had any pace on him, but I was comfortably able to follow him, and I was just, as you say, just counting up like every other lap. He was getting one out of Tavolo 2 and got a couple in Blanchimont as well, and I was like, well, I'm doing a lot better than you at the moment. So I was that's definitely part of it too.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of this, a lot of trains, haven't we, Ben? We've seen a lot of cars and trains and not making moves. I mean, is it because, once you get past, there's no point because of the slipstream effect? We're surprised by the lack of aggression in the field, I think, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's kind of what we've been seeing. We've been seeing in the practice races as well all week. And there's actually multiple reasons, and one of them is taking it easy to not get the incident points. You can also save tyres, and we're having to double stint tyres, but it's a little bit sketchy with the rear tyres in the second stint. So if we can run a slightly higher TC or just be slightly less aggressive in cornering and especially on acceleration, then that's great. That saves the tyres. And then there's also fuel, obviously. Slipstream makes a big difference here. Not only does it mean you can keep up with cars that are much faster than you, but it also means that if you're the same speed as the car in front of you, you can save enormous amounts of fuel and work towards saving that whole pit stop later. And then there's the fact that it's a 24-hour race. The incident point limit comes in again in terms of, I'm going to make a pass and this guy's going to fight me for it. Are we going to get a 4X? And that's like an entire hour's worth of incident point budget if you just happen to touch each other. So you've got to be really thoughtful about your passes as well. And then obviously the iRacing damage model, which isn't the most consistent thing in the world. So it's always nice to mitigate against risks there. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons that you're going to end up seeing cars sitting in draft trains, for sure. Might see a bit less of that later on in the race, but yeah, for now that's kind of a really good thing to do, unless you're being really badly held up.
Well, big switch up for our battle. We're watching for 7th position. Josh Thompson finding himself on the outside line and losing a spot to Yuri Kasdorp, losing a spot to Antti Ahola. So he drops down 2, and a big shake-up in that BMW train. Just one last question from me, Scott. In terms of the fact that we're racing in October effectively rather than July, has that made a big difference on the way that the car reacts? And obviously the temperatures are going to be very different. Have you had to kind of start again with setup?
Well, we're starting from scratch anyway, because we're not typically that much of a GT3 team. Certainly, I don't know if you remember Sam and I at Le Mans, but we were in the LMP1 car, so that was a pretty big switch. And it's taken us a long time to adapt from an LMP1 car at Le Mans to a GT3 at Spa. But also with iRacing, with their constant tyre model upgrades, you're always restarting on setup. But it has been nice because iRacing's tyre model just feels so much nicer in cool conditions. I've done a lot of my practice in night and absolute bottomed out the temperatures, and the car handles like a dream in those conditions. And yeah, we're going to see like 15 hours of the race is going to be at night. So that's definitely something we've taken into account. But with these top level teams, you pretty much start from scratch almost every special event, just because of the way iRacing is. So yeah, not a huge change there, but it's definitely, we've taken it into account with our preparation for sure.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Scott Michaels from the 21 G-Drive Racing Eximia car at the moment, lying in 50th position. Have a good one, Scott.
Cheers, guys. Keep up the great work. It's great hearing you commentate on these races. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Scott.
Awesome. I mean, I'm not John Hindhaugh, but you know.
You will be one day.
It's not.
And while we're on the subject, my name's pronounced Michaels, not Michaels, or whatever I heard you say during my stint. Oh yeah, I appreciated. Yeah, I appreciated the insinuation that I might be an exotic European. But, I was born in Brackley, so.
You know, usually we get number one, we get an entry list that has country codes, so that helps you to understand where the name comes from. Number two, when we're at the track, we can come and say hello and find out the pronunciations, but the virtual world makes it a little bit tricky. Thank you. We can now say it's Sam Michaels rather than Sam Michaels or anything else.
That was really interesting. That was really interesting, Ben, because it's interesting that they have been surprised by the fuel economy of the McLaren as well. So there's some hurried calculations being done back at the various sim racing HQs to work out what on earth they can do to mitigate against what is a huge advantage as time moves on.
We've seen quite a few changes whilst we were talking to Scott there in that battle